You know the scenario. It's late. It's maybe 11:30 p.m. You're lying in bed. Lights are off. But your face is glowing blue because you are doom scrolling. But you're not scrolling news. You're scrolling possibilities. You're on a travel site, maybe a high-end fashion app, and you have built the absolute perfect life in your shopping cart.
Ah, the famous fantasy cart.
Exactly, the fantasy cart. You've got the ticket to Paris business class, obviously, because you're treating yourself.
Of course.
You've got the handmade Italian suit or, the dress that makes you look like a movie star. Then there's the barista-grade espresso machine that costs more than your first car.
And in that moment, just looking at the pixels, you feel like that person. You aren't just looking at the machine. You can almost smell the coffee.
Yes, you are that person on the balcony in Paris.
Yeah.
It's pure potential energy. But then you click checkout and you look at the subtotal. And then you do that terrifying little app switch over to your mobile banking.
Oh, that switch.
And the feeling in your stomach, that drop, that is the sound of reality crashing right into your imagination.
It's a visceral, almost physiological reaction to a very specific economic problem.
See, usually we treat that moment as a personal failure. We stare at the screen and think, I worked hard this month. Why can't I have this? I must be bad with money.
I'm failing at adulthood.
Right. But the stack of materials we are diving into today argues something completely different. It basically says, stop taking it personally. You aren't bad at math. You are just fighting a law of physics.
Or, maybe more accurately, the fundamental law of economics. You're trying to break gravity.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into this really unique educational curriculum. It's titled Economics for Life. Specifically, we're unpacking the very first lesson, the law of scarcity.
And it is not your standard dry textbook with supply and demand curves.
Not at all. It's written almost like a screenplay. It uses characters, a narrative, and strangely enough, it uses Russian vocabulary to force you to kind of rewire your brain.
It's a fascinating approach. I think the source material operates on the premise that if you just tell people, spend less money, they just tune out.
It's too naggy, yeah.
So it creates a drama, a showdown between two very different ways of seeing the world to explain why we can never, ever have it all.
Okay, so let's set that stage. The material introduces us to two protagonists who sort of battle it out through the text. First, we have Annie.
Annie is the proxy for the reader. The text labels her the spender, but I don't know, that feels a little reductive. She's really the optimist.
I agree.
High energy, impulsive, lives entirely in the present tense. She is the personification of that late night shopping cart we were just talking about.
She feels very relatable in the text. I mean, she isn't greedy. She doesn't want to hoard gold or anything.
No.
She just has a lot of enthusiasm for living. She sees a dress. She imagines the party. She wants the dress. She sees a gadget, sees how it saves time. Wants the gadget.
Right. She represents the unchecked impulse. And then sitting across the table from her, you have her foil, Sean.
Sean's a piece of work. He's the expert character. He's a tutor. He's highly intellectual, very precise. And honestly, he comes off a bit robotic.
He's not there to be her friend. He's there to be her reality check.
Exactly.
He's designed that way explicitly. In the text, Sean represents economic logic. And logic doesn't really care about your feelings, it just cares about variables.
And he has this quirk that the curriculum enforces, where whenever he introduces a core concept, he refuses to use the English word. He switches to Russian.
Which is so jarring at first. I mean, I'm reading this English dialogue, and suddenly he's dropping these terms. What's the goal there? Why make it harder?
Well, the argument is that it's actually to make it clearer. Think about a word like scarcity. We hear it all the time. Scarcity mindset. Resource scarcity. It's become background noise. It's lost its edge.
Right. It's a buzzword.
But by forcing you to learn a foreign term, a totally new sound, it creates this speed bump in your reading. You have to stop and ask, wait, what does that actually mean?
It strips the cultural baggage away. It forces you to look at the concept totally naked.
Precisely. It turns that vague feeling of being broke into a very precise technical term.
Okay, so let's get into the conflict that kicks this whole lesson off. The text starts with Annie in a crisis.
She has a trifecta of desires. She wants a new designer dress, she wants vacation to Paris, and she wants this top-tier espresso machine.
And she doesn't just kind of want them, she feels she needs them.
Right, and she's frustrated because she works hard, she's a good person, but her bank account is just saying no. So she's looking at Sean, basically saying, fix this. Show me the trick to get all three.
And this is the setup for the first major concept, the fundamental conflict. Annie believes her problem is a lack of funds. She thinks if she just had a raise or a bonus,
Or won a scratch-off ticket, the problem would just vanish.
but Sean corrects her immediately. He explains that she is misdiagnosing the issue. The problem isn't the size of her bank account.
So what is it?
It's the discrepancy between the nature of human desire and the nature of reality. He introduces this concept of infinite wants.
Now, infinite feels like a strong word, doesn't it? I mean, looking at the text, Annie doesn't want everything in the world. She just wants those three things.
In the economic sense, yes, it is infinite. The source material argues that desire is a hydra. If Annie gets the dress, does she stop wanting things?
No, of course not. She immediately needs matching shoes.
If she gets the shoes, she needs a bag. If she goes to Paris, next year she won't want to go to a local beach. She'll want Rome, or maybe fly first class instead of economy.
It's the old hedonic treadmill.
Exactly. The source argues that human imagination is limitless. We can always conjure up a better version of our life. There's just no finish line for wanting.
But our resources, those definitely have a finish line.
They do. And this is where Sean drops the first Russian term. He tells Annie she is suffering from ogranickonost.
Ogranickonost, it sounds heavy.
It translates roughly to limitation or scarcity. But in this context, it refers to a boundary condition, a hard wall. Sean explains that ogranickonost is the default state of the universe.
There's a finite number of dollars in your account. Even if you're a billionaire, it's still a finite number. It starts somewhere.
Exactly. So when an infinite force, our imagination, hits a finite object, our resources, you get friction.
You get scarcity.
And what I like about the source's distinction here is that Sean emphasizes this isn't an Annie problem, it's a math problem. Annie feels shame because she can't afford the trip. Sean just looks at it and says, there is no shame in gravity. Ogranickonost is just economic gravity.
That's a really helpful reframe. It kind of stops the self-loathing. But Annie, being the optimist she is, she tries to find a loophole.
Of course she does.
She looks at the equation and thinks, okay, I can't lower my wants, so I have to raise my resources.
Right, the classic hustle culture solution.
Exactly. She says, fine, Sean, if I don't have enough money, I'll just get more money. I'll take a second job. I'll drive for a rideshare at night. I will brute force my way to that checkout button.
Which, to be fair, is what a lot of financial gurus tell you to do. Side hustle your way to freedom.
It's the American ethos, for sure. But this source material shuts that down immediately. Sean calls it a logic trap. Why?
Because of the second variable, we tend to think of resources as just money.
Right. If we have enough cash, we're good.
But the text explicitly defines resources as a triad. It's money, time, and energy. And scarcity ogranickonost applies to all three of them.
The source uses this three-job scenario to prove this, and it really paints a bleak picture.
Yeah, let's walk through.
Okay, so Sean lays out Annie's hypothetical schedule. Let's say she works 18 hours a day. She's got her 9 to 5. Then she drives for a ride share from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Then she does freelance data entry until 2 a.m.
Okay, so mathematically, she now has the cash. She has defeated financial scarcity. She buys the ticket to Paris. She buys the espresso machine.
But then you look at her time scarcity. When is she going to Paris?
She can't. She's working 3 jobs to pay for the ticket. If she actually goes, she stops working, loses the income, and goes into debt.
And the espresso machine.
She's drinking that espresso in a travel mug while sprinting to her third job, probably on 4 hours of sleep.
And that brings us to the third resource, energy.
Which is so often the most overlooked one.
Good.
The source makes a point that energy is a finite bank, just like money is. You have a metabolic limit.
If Annie burns the candle at both ends to get the money, she's physically too exhausted to enjoy the things she bought.
So she has the stuff, but she's completely destroyed the life.
That's the core insight here. You can convert time into money. That's what a job is. But it's an imperfect exchange. You eventually hit a hard cap.
There are only 24 hours in a day. You can't hustle your way into a 25th hour. That resource is just strictly finite.
It's a zero-sum game. If you max out the money slider, the time and energy sliders just have to drop.
And Sean's whole argument to Annie is that she's trying to outrun a law of physics. She thinks if she runs fast enough, she won't have to choose. But the lesson is, you always have to choose.
Which brings us to the mechanism of choosing. If we accept that we can't have it all, how do we decide? The source material offers a specific tool for this.
It does. And again, it uses a Russian term to reframe a common English word. The concept is the trade-off. But the word Sean forces Annie to use is compromise.
Now, compromise, in English,
Yeah.
It usually sounds kind of negative, right? We compromised. It sounds like settling.
Yeah, it implies weakness. It implies you lost something. But the source defines compromise differently. It frames it as a binding agreement with reality.
How so?
It is the no that makes the yes possible.
Unpack that a bit for me. The no behind the yes.
Okay, the text gives this granular example. Annie wants to go out for a nice dinner. The menu price is $50. Annie sees the cost is $50.
Simple accounting. Debit $50. Done.
But Sean says that's wrong. The cost isn't the currency. The cost is what that currency could have been.
Opportunity cost.
Yes, but framed more aggressively. If Annie buys the dinner, she is actively deleting the possibility of buying a new phone case, or she's wiping out 1% of her Paris fund. Buying the dinner is an act of destruction toward the other options.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
If I eat this appetizer, I am destroying my future vacation. How is that helpful?
I know, it sounds intense, but the source argues it's actually liberating. See, Annie's misery comes from the delusion that she can keep her options open forever.
She wants to eat the dinner and still have the potential for the phone case.
Exactly. She wants to live in this quantum state where she has both. And compromise collapses the wave function. It forces her to admit, I am choosing the dinner, I am sacrificing the phone case, and I am okay with that.
It forces ownership of the choice.
It does. If you don't acknowledge the trade-off, you spend the money on dinner and then you feel guilty later. You feel like a victim. But if you acknowledge the compromise, you say, I value this meal more than that plastic case. You take control.
So it moves the decision from, I can't afford this, to, I am choosing not to buy this so I can buy something else.
Which is a massive psychological shift. Even if the math is identical, it turns you from a victim into an agent.
Speaking of psychology, though, I do want to touch on the constraints of this source material. We mentioned the Russian words, but there's another rule in the instructions that I found really distinct.
The strict prohibitions.
Right. There is a bold warning in the text. Do not mention psychology. Do not mention trauma. Do not mention emotional triggers.
It's very strict. It basically forbids the teacher from ever asking Annie how she feels.
Which feels so counterintuitive for today, right?
We
live in the era of feelings first. Usually a modern approach would ask, Annie, what void are you trying to fill?
Right, the therapeutic approach.
Right.
Let's heal the spender.
But this source says, absolutely not. Don't go there. Why do you think that is? Isn't that ignoring a huge part of the puzzle?
It is ignoring a part, but I think it's doing it to isolate the mechanism. If you mix psychology with economics, things get muddy. You start excusing the math because of the feelings.
Oh, Annie deserves the Paris trip because she's had a hard year.
Exactly. And the math doesn't care about her year. The bank account doesn't know she's sad. It only knows the balance. By banning psychology, the source forces you to look at the situation like an engineer.
It doesn't matter why the bridge collapsed. It only matters that the load exceeded the capacity.
That's it. It's cold, but you can see how it's effective. It turns life into a navigation problem rather than a moral judgment.
And to prove these are the rules of the game for everyone, the text zooms way out. It doesn't just stay on Annie.
This is the universality section, and I think this is crucial because it stops Annie from feeling like a failure. The source asks, does Apple, the richest company in the world, face scarcity?
Your gut reaction is no. They have infinite cash. They can buy whatever they want.
But Sean argues, do they have infinite engineers? Do they have infinite rare earth metals for their chips? Infinite factory time?
No, of course not. Those are all finite.
So even Apple has to make a compromise. Every year, Tim Cook has to decide. Do we put our best engineers on the new iPhone, or do we move them to the Vision Pro headset? He can't do both with maximum intensity.
That's wild to think about, that the same mechanic stopping me from buying a coffee is stopping Apple from launching 2 major products at once.
And the source takes it even further. It brings in the government. A sovereign nation can technically print money, so you'd think they are immune to scarcity.
But they aren't.
No, this is the classic guns versus butter model mentioned in the text. A government has limited steel, limited labor, limited land. If they use the steel to build tanks, guns.
That is steel that physically cannot be used to build bridges or schools.
They have to trade off defense against infrastructure. Even if they print $1 trillion, they can't print more steel or more skilled workers. The scarcity is real.
The scale changes, but the law of Agranicanost remains unbreakable.
Exactly.
I find that oddly comforting, actually.
So?
Well, it democratizes the struggle. I'm not bad at life because I have to choose between a car payment and a vacation. I'm just operating under the same universal law as the president and the CEO of Apple.
That is exactly where the source wants you to land. Scarcity isn't a punishment, it's the context. It's just the water we all swim in.
Okay, so if we look at this whole lesson, what's the ultimate takeaway for someone listening to this deep dive?
I think it really boils down to 3 pillars.
Hit me.
First, you have to accept scarcity, a economist. It is not a temporary glitch you'll fix when you get a raise. It's permanent. Infinite wants, finite resources. Second, resources are multidimensional. Stop looking only at your bank balance. You have to budget your time and your energy with the same rigor you budget your cash.
That's the 3 jobs warning. And the third,
Embrace the trade-off, compromise. Just stop looking for the perfect solution where you get everything. It doesn't exist. Realize that every yes requires a no.
I have to play the skeptic one last time, though. Does understanding all this actually change anything practical? Does it put more money in Annie's pocket?
No, it doesn't add a dime to her account.
Does it get her to Paris?
Not necessarily.
So what's the point?
The point is clarity. It changes how she spends what she has. It moves her from being a victim of her desires to being a strategic manager of them.
It sounds like it gives her agency. Instead of the checkout button happening to her, she's the one deciding what gets deleted to make room for what matters.
Precisely. She becomes the CEO of her own limitations. She stops agonizing over what she can't have and starts optimizing what she can.
You know, this whole conversation makes me rethink that phrase we hear all the time, having it all.
It's the modern mantra, right? On every magazine cover.
You can have the career, the family, the travel, the hobbies. But if we really listen to Sean and we look at this law of scarcity, is having it all actually a lie?
Worse than a lie, it's a logical impossibility.
Right. If even a superpower can't have it all, why are we beating ourselves up for not achieving it?
And that's the provocative thought I'd want to leave you with. Maybe we should stop trying to have it all. Maybe the value of your life isn't defined by the things you accumulated.
But by the things you willingly gave up.
Because the sacrifice is what proves the value. Think about it. If you could have the trip to Paris and the espresso machine easily, neither would mean much. They'd just be clutter.
Right.
But because you had to sacrifice the machine to get the trip, that trip creates a memory that is actually worth something. The constraint creates the meaning.
The fact that it was hard to choose makes the choice matter.
It does. So next time you're staring at that shopping cart at 11:30 p.m., don't feel bad about hitting delete. That's just you making a choice. That's you giving value to the things you keep.
I think I can sleep a little better knowing that. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.